Welcome to The Real Life Buyer. In this podcast, you will discover interviews with procurement and technical experts, business owners, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders. These experts will help you to develop and grow, accelerate your career, improve your business, save money, and buy smart. Now introducing The Real Life Buyer, Dave Barr.
Hello, and welcome to the Real Life Buyer podcast. My next guest is Paul Halme. Paul went from working as a stockbroker for a major Wall Street firm to running a martial arts gym for 15 years or so. He has since launched a consulting business, is a 2 times best-selling author, an international speaker, and a sought-after mentor. So Paul's done quite a few things in his life already. Paul's books are How to Make Money with Your Martial Arts Gym, even if you haven't won anything yet. And the second one is The Money Fight. Take down your money problems, slam yourself out, and fight your way to financial freedom. Paul now specializes in helping entrepreneurs across industries to fix their finances, learn how to invest, and then buy assets to create passive income. Today, I want to dig into how Paul started, developed, and scaled his ventures into successful and profitable businesses, and how his journey resulted in a lucrative passive income stream type business. So without any further delay, I welcome Paul onto the podcast. Hi, Paul.
Thank you, Dave. I'm happy to be here.
Fantastic. So quite an intriguing history you've had already with so many different things. And if you look from the outside, very diverse, as I think I mentioned. So you've appeared to move from one career success to another career success, not just within a niche, but also across a range of businesses and disciplines. So perhaps you can give an overview of your key life milestones and events that steered your career path before we dive into more detail.
Yeah, that's a good question. So things are pretty, got out of college, everything's pretty typical here in the US. Graduated from college, got married, had a house, 2 kids, a dog, corporate job, making great money, great benefits, and everything was perfect, but it wasn't. And I was like, man, was kind of missing out on stuff, feeling like I didn't have the passion I had anymore, started gaining weight, was working a whole bunch, kind of unhappy. And then my best friend was doing MMA and in the UFC and starting to fight. And I was helping him with his gym and came to a crossroads where it was like, do I stay in corporate America or do I become an entrepreneur? And then I made that jump. And then from that moment on, that decision is just kind of compounded into everything I've done since.
Right. You think of a job, a stockbrokering job, one assumes you've put an awful lot of work into getting into that position. You've got to be pretty darn smart and financially acute to do that kind of stuff. I guess you said about college, you must have stayed very hard and got lots of qualifications to move into that kind of role. I'm thinking, well, okay, so you've worked your socks off, you're getting into a cracking job, really well paid, and then you want to go, as some people were seeing, to a gym ownership.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think, well, hold on a minute. I've got 6-figure probably income coming into one side, and now I'm going to diversify and change completely perhaps into having a gym. So why is the key question to me. Why would you do that?
Yeah, it was crazy. It was kind of a perfect storm of everything. I was doing the job. Everything was going good. Everything was, family life was great, but it was like, I started to get around my friend and his friends and I see these entrepreneurs and I was like, man, these guys are wired different. It's like they don't work a 9 to 5. They work like a 7 to 7. They work all day. But there's something about it where I was like, oh, I really enjoy this. And, and I might not have taken the jump if my best friend hadn't gone on the Ultimate Fighter show and signed with the UFC. And then when a couple of years, we got to travel around the world and everything. So it was like, I took the leap when all that went down. And in hindsight, I think it was like, I got lucky really. Cause it was like, I don't know if I ever would have actually taken the full jump or not, but when I did, it just was like, okay. But the cool part was I'm not always a burn a boat guy. I'm like, okay, I got a backup plan. So I knew I had 2 years till my license is expired. So I was like, if everything goes bad, I can go back. I left my employer on good terms. I was good at my job. So I knew I had that to go. So.
Okay. But how about your family? Because you're saying about you've got, wife and 2 kids, that financial security must have been wonderful for them. And then suddenly you become perhaps into a dangerous area. Is that something that really was a difficult transition for your family as well?
Yeah, it was tough conversations. Luckily, my wife's super supportive because she could tell that I wasn't happy at this point because I was, 5-6 years in and it just wasn't myself anymore. I was probably 30, 40 pounds heavier than I am now of just pure fat, and working 12 hours a day and just sleeping all the time when I couldn't, drinking a ton of coffee. And then she knew that I wanted to do something different. And then I was always trying to to do that. So she was super supportive. She was like, I think this could work. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm kind of nervous. So luckily I had her support. Yeah. If I wouldn't have had her support, then it wouldn't have worked. Cause then if I'd had tension at home plus tension, trying to run a business and start it from the ground up, it'd have been rough.
Right. So here we go. We're starting from the ground up. If you've got somebody, a friend that's already in the kind of niche area. So how did you go about gathering the finances, finding the location, and start the business off? What was that journey like?
And it was funny because I actually tried to delay it. I was like, I don't know if I'm going to do this or not. My wife was like, well, I said, if I can find a spot with a 1-year lease, that way we're only on the hook for a year, I would do it. And then literally I was at work. And then one day she calls me. She's like, hey, I found a place. And I talked to the landlord, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh my God, I really am going to do this. I was like, this is kind of terrifying. So I was like, okay, if I do this, I'm not quitting my job until I know I can do this. So I actually did both jobs for 2 years, which was at the end of that, I was like, oh my God, I'm so fried out because I'd work all day at my job. And then I would come home, say hi to the family, kids, everything. Then I go teach classes from 5:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. Monday through Thursday. So I used the corporate job to fund the other one. And I did a lot of things the wrong way, looking in hindsight, where I could have done it a lot better by, not renting a place with no students.
And that's the key thing here. You needed to get people through the door. And, you often see people advertising in the local rag, flying out to different places. What was your strategy for building the demand that came into your gym?
This is going to sound funny because it was so long ago. Literally, the only major marketing strategy was the yellow pages. It's like people don't understand. People complain about Facebook ads, like, oh, my Facebook ad didn't work. I'm like, you don't understand what it's like when you had to wait for your yellow page rep to come in. You had to give them your design and then you paid them and you couldn't change it to the next 6 months. So it was come up with money to do yellow page ads and a lot of guerrilla marketing back then because there wasn't social. Literally it was pre-social media days, pre-Google days. It was like, you had to just be seen. So it was a lot of, putting flyers around town, little snipe signs, by the road with the name of the business and the number. A lot of stuff you can't do nowadays. But things also are easier nowadays because you have so many different avenues you can market on. It's insane.
Right. Okay. So that's really interesting because, a lot of people nowadays, as you rightly say, use technology to advertise. In the old days, old people like me are used to yellow pages. In fact, you barely see a yellow pages anymore. I don't think I've ever seen one for 5-10 years, I guess. So they're probably worth something now. Nostalgia, everything else. Okay, so you I guess you worked on a lot of word of mouth and local development, but it started to grow and starting to do fairly well, I guess. But then you started to think about other things again. You got itchy feet, should I say. So what was the catalyst to this feeling and why did you go on a new journey?
I started running the gym really well and people started asking questions like, hey, how do you do this? How do you do that? And the hardest part about that is people are like, hey, I'll take you to lunch and I want to pick your brain or whatever. And it's like, oh my God. And it's like, do that a few times. And you give them the whole rundown. This is how you do everything. And you'd spend 2 hours. Maybe they pay for lunch. Maybe they didn't. And then literally they do nothing you told them. And I was like, okay, thanks for wasting my life. It's like, I have things to do. So I was like, I wanted to help people, but I was like, I didn't know the right route to go. So I talked to a mentor of mine and I was thinking actually about getting out of the business because I'd hit the gym thing and it was running easy. And I was like, man, I want to do something different. I want to get bigger. I wanted to get into internet marketing, learn all about that. And we started talking about the business and I was like, I don't know what I want to go into. And he's like, well, tell me about your business. And I explained it all to him, how it works and the profitability, the numbers. And he's like, okay, you need to write a book and you need to consult other people and just don't do it for free. Just, the people don't pay. They're not going to do anything you tell them anyways. So you're not, so do it that way. So we wrote the book and from there launched a consulting company and it was amazing.
So you mentioned a mentor. That's something most people don't have. So how did you go about, firstly, perhaps finding the mentor, selecting the right one for you, and obviously then use that person to help you, so we say, help you develop a career path or a new way of moving forwards?
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. It's actually a really funny story how this one happened. I was actually following a guy in the UK, Dan Meredith. I don't know if you ever heard of him. He's a marketing guy in the UK. And I just found him randomly on Facebook. I was like, oh man, this guy's super cool. And he was in Thailand interviewing another guy about this event they were going to put on in Thailand. And I'd been to Thailand before for training, but I was like, oh, it'd be fun to go there just for like a business convention and no work, no training, just hang out and have fun. So I had it all planned out. I was going to go there. And at the last minute, the guy that I was following, Dan, pulled out of the event. And I was like, oh my God, I just bought a ticket to Thailand. I don't know this other person. I don't know what I'm doing. And I sent the guy a message like, hey, let's jump on a call real quick. And I jumped on a call and I was like, dude, it's like, I already paid for everything I want to go, but I don't know. I know Dan's not going. And he was like, well, I promise you come in, it'll be the best event ever. You'll learn a bunch of stuff. And it ended up being like a life-changing moment for me when I met, his name's Mitch Miller. I met him in Phuket, and it was just so different than what I was used to. And he hit me pretty straight with everything when I was trying to tell him, like, oh, I want out of this industry. I want to do this, this, and this. And he's like, no, he's like, your expertise is in this. Why would you try to sell something you're not an expert in when you don't even need to create social proof. You have it, you do it every day. And I was like, oh, it's really smart. Okay. I like this guy. So yeah, he's been my mentor for a while, helped me out with a lot of stuff where, like I said, a lot of people don't have that. And especially when you go into the entrepreneur world, you need somebody that can help you collapse time and not cut corners, but cut time down, because you could figure it out on your own. Like when I first opened my gym, the first 7 years was me just trying to figure stuff out. And then it's like, I started hiring people and I'm like, okay. So I figured out, like, if this guy's at this point and I get him to coach me, he can coach me there faster. Just like in jiu-jitsu. It's like, if you have a good coach, you're going to get better faster than if you have no coach. So yeah, if you're an entrepreneur, you don't have a mentor, always look for one. I always tell people, look for somebody who's where you want to be or done what you want to do, because then they have a track record and they've done it. They're not like, some of these guys that you're like, you see them online, you're like, this doesn't feel right. And then it's like, I don't follow those guys at all.
Yeah, yeah. Now you mentioned jiu-jitsu. I've done a little bit of martial arts stuff in my old days, so to speak, and I helped my son when he was young and trying to work on karate. Now, obviously, the key things you get there, I would say, there's certainly discipline, and your mindset is some of the, for me, it was some of the main attributes other than the physical stuff. So how important has the discipline and the mindset come from the martial art world affected you in the business world?
It's affected me tremendously. It's like, I grew up as like a shy kid, wasn't that confident, a little bit overweight, played a lot of golf, which people see me nowadays are like, you were a golfer. I'm like, yeah, it was a different life. I've had a lot of different lives, but jiu-jitsu training just gives you that confidence. Even when I was in corporate America, I was more confident than a lot of people, because you just feel better about yourself. You can handle things that are stressful. And as I progressed in jiu-jitsu and business and then entrepreneurship, it really paid dividends, because, anybody's started something or done something, you're going to face a lot of adversity. You're going to face things where you're like, man, I'm just going to quit and do this or do that. And it's like, the jiu-jitsu training kind of gives you that ability to like work through like really tough situations where, you're training and you're just like, oh my God, this person's trying to kill me. And you're really trying to survive. So, then when you're dealing with a tough business decision, it's like, well, it's not that bad, so it's really helped me a lot. Right.
Does it help you in forming a strategy, planning in some ways? Does it help that mental discipline as well?
Oh yeah, 100%. I go back to like the fighting days back when I was coaching more MMA and doing MMA. Is everything's built off of a plan. So if a guy's fighting in the UFC, in 8 weeks from now, it's like we build everything from that point backwards. And then you have a whole plan, what you're doing each week, what you're doing each day, what you're doing each hour, what you need to get done. And then the same thing in business. So if we got a big goal, it's like, hey, we're going to do this launch in 6 weeks. I do the exact same thing. I just reverse engineer it. So this is what we're going to do. We reverse engineer it back to the daily habits, and then we just do it. And then that's one thing that has helped a lot for jiu-jitsu and MMA training is I don't overthink things a bunch. Like if I know I want to get somewhere and it's something that the business has to do, then I just reverse engineer it and I just implement the habits and I just keep doing them. Because a lot of times our heads are our biggest enemies. Like we get self-doubt, like, oh man, I don't know if I can do this. And half the time in jiu-jitsu and MMA, I didn't think I could do it, but I did it anyway. So it's like you start learning to do that, and then it translates into business where you do the same thing. It comes down to the habits you create. Create winning habits, and you're going to win the game.
Right. I love you mention the word habits there. What kind of habits, if we have a look at your day, how do you schedule your day so you make sure that those key habits are there? So what are the habits and when do you do them?
Man, that's a great question. I used to do everything wrong. So I was at that thing of saying of like, people that are super busy usually aren't that productive because they're just good at staying busy. And I used to be like that. I could stay so busy. I'm a multitasker, and I'd brag about being able to do like, I could do this, this, and this. And you look at the results and I wasn't getting the results. And it was like, okay, I really need to dial this in and get good. So I started following people that were like known for like morning routines and building habits and like Atomic Habits. I think it's James Clear wrote it. Great book, like things like that really set me on the right path where I was like, okay. So I'd start looking at my days and I want to be a good dad. I want to be a good husband. I want to be a good entrepreneur. I want to be a good jiu-jitsu coach. I was like, I wear so many hats. So it's like, I have to time block. So I know my blocks are like, from 11 to 1, it's some kind of either jiu-jitsu or the gym or something. If it's not jiu-jitsu, then it's the gym with my wife. And then at nighttime from 6 to 8, it's jiu-jitsu, run the gym, business. So the morning, I have to win my mornings is one thing I joke around about. Like I have to get up and I have to be productive. It's like, I can't just sit around and think about things. I go through, get all my little things done because those things build. into big wins. And then from there, I can step each spot through. So starting off mornings, getting some quick wins, getting those things done, and then following my time blocks keeps me sane. And then it's also too, it's funny, the older I get, the more I'm learning is being able to cut loose. So it's like on Fridays, I'm done at 1:00. Like I'm done. It's like, I don't work. I mean, if I want to do stuff, I do, but I usually don't. I try to I force myself to disconnect at, in the afternoon on Friday, then I'm present for my wife and kids, do whatever. Then we all go to the gym together as a family and work out. And then we'll grab sushi or something fun. And then Saturdays is like my hard jujitsu day. Every week, I know it's going to be the toughest day of the week, but I do that from 9 to 10:30 in the morning. And then I'm done on Saturday. We just hang out and do family stuff. And Sunday's kind of a reset day. So really, the older I've gotten, the more I've focused on that Monday through Thursday, getting all the stuff done, and then tapering into the weekend and enjoying it and having fun and doing that stuff. So that was one good thing of being locked down, is you learn to develop a really good routine to keep you sane.
Right. And how important is diet amongst that? You mentioned the physical stuff.
It's unreal important, because when I was younger, I could get away with stuff. As long as you're working out, you can eat whatever you want. And every year you get older, it's harder and harder and harder. And so I had to look at that, because I was looking at things. I'm like, man, I work out all the time. I'm doing this and I'm not where I want to be physically. What's wrong with me? And it's like, through the week, I do good. And on the weekend was eating really bad. So it was like making better decisions. Talking to my wife, sitting down, like, hey, I know we do stuff on the weekend, but let's try to cut down on some of the stuff we eat. It's like, I've had to make some decisions, and it helps a lot, because even though I can work out as much as I want, I can still gain weight, because diet's a huge thing. If you're eating horribly, it's so tough.
Yeah. So think about this now then. So you're making sure you have a good diet, you have good fuel coming to you, you structure your day very well. You said about getting some quick wins under your belt. So fire yourself up, I guess.
Yep.
You focus on the physical exercise. Perhaps that's a good stress reliever, tension reliever, making you perhaps more active to tackle other difficult situations. And then you've got really good time for your social, your family life. There seem to be the main points from that.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah. The big thing is, really enjoying it. It's funny now, because I look back, because my son's 19, he's in college now. And it's like, I'm like, man, did I do a good job? You just don't know, because it's like, they're on their own now. It's like, you just did everything you could. And you look back and it's like, okay, we did a lot of stuff. We spent time together. And it's like, but you don't realize how fast it goes. Like, if you got little kids and you listen to this now, it's like, spend extra little bits of time with them, because one day you're going to wake up and they're going to not be here anymore. They're going to be in college. And you're like, wow, that went by really freaking fast.
Now, you mentioned a really good book earlier, The Atomic Habits.
Oh my God, it's so good.
Yeah. How important is self-development, mental development, by reading books, listening to podcasts to you?
Oh yeah. It's like,
you got a little library behind you there. Yeah.
Oh yeah. It's all, it's all like self-help, leadership, small business, stuff like that. Cause like I said earlier, your mind is like, a lot of times it's our biggest enemy. And the thing is, especially if you're an entrepreneur and you're trying to do things that are unnormal, people aren't going to support you. It's so sad. It's like, even your family, it's like, oh, I want to do this. And they're like, oh, no, I don't, that's really risky. I'm like, I got to the point, a few years ago, I started joking around. Like, I don't tell even my family what I'm going to do now. It's like, one of my mentors said that. He was like, you got to stop talking about what you're going to do and just show people the results. And I'm like, oh, that's great advice, because people will try to belittle your ideas, and it's like, remember, look at Elon Musk. Everybody made fun of him about Tesla. It's like, oh, this idiot's trying to start an electric car company. It's like, people are talking all these horrible things about the guy. He almost lost all his money. And now he's going to be the first trillionaire on pace in the world. And it's like, it's so crazy to see somebody that successful. If you watch how people just dumped on him and how crazy he was, it's like, it's super hard to find supportive people.
Yeah. Now, you touched on two things there. One clear thing is self-belief there. No matter what people are saying around you, if you feel something is right, you double down on it, focus on it, and keep driving forwards. That, I guess, is a key thing for you. You have the self-belief with you from your jiu-jitsu, definitely, and probably your stockbroking career. Yeah. So that's critical. Yeah.
It's like, I give a good analogy, and I still think about this day, because you're going to do things and it's going to be scary and it's going to be hard and everything. And I'll never forget my first MMA fight, because I was older when I started. I just wanted to do it because I wanted to be a better coach. I was 34, or I was 33, I think 33. That's really old to start doing MMA. I mean, I've been doing jiu-jitsu, but jiu-jitsu and MMA are two different animals. MMA is very violent, very physical, very demanding. And I was like, man, I want to be a better coach, so I got to do this. I'll never forget, like, you do everything perfect, you do everything right that you can. And then I tell people, it's like, you're standing behind this curtain and you're just like, literally, it's just, you can hear people, but you can't see anything. You're just kind of like, you're scared to death at this point. And then it's like, they say your name, and then like the smoke machine goes off and the lights go off and the curtain opens, and you're like, well, I have to do this. And so that's kind of translated really well to my business career too, because like whenever I'm really scared and I get nervous, like, oh my God, I'm like, that feeling kind of comes back. And I'm like, okay, this is what I need to do. This is the scary stuff. This is the hard stuff. This is what separates, superstars to average people. And then, so I try to get around people that are doing huge things like that. But yeah, it's like having that ability to just push past what scares you is huge.
Yeah, I think that's a brilliant point here, because you mentioned earlier on about other people's fears trying to manifest on yourself. So look, don't take the risk, don't do this, don't do that, because your family are trying to protect you, I guess. Yep. Now, if you've taken that fear or where you've been scared of something and taken it as an adrenaline rush, a fuel for going forward, surging forward. So, I think that's a key takeaway there for people to recognize. If people aren't necessarily trying to drag you down, but they're just trying to protect you in some ways. And you've got to use that fear to drive yourself forward.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, 100%.
Okay. Now, let's go back to your consulting business. You've already done some consulting just by the nature that people come to you. They're seeing you as a leader. Now, what do you think are the key attributes that draw people to you? Why did they come to you in the first place, do you think?
It's funny. I've looked at it actually when you said that, because we're basically rebuilding our company, because pre-2020, running a gym was like super easy. Consulting for gyms was super easy and money just poured in. I'm like, this is the greatest. I got everything made. This is awesome. Then fast forward to 2020, they're like, hey, you have to close your business and all of your clients have to close their business. I'm like, awesome. So my business is closed and I'm consulting for closed businesses. This is a really bad career choice. So going through that, it was tough. So what I've always done and what people I choose to follow is I show them a life that they could live. So I'm pretty transparent with stuff I do. Some people are like, oh, you're bragging, you're doing that. I'm like, no, I'm just showing people it's possible. People are like, oh, you can't make that much money with a gym. I'm like, yes, you can. It's like I have a client now. It still blows me away. Even through 2020 to 2022, he's grown his gym. And he's in the US with one location. He does over $130,000 a month. I mean, it's insane. Wow. I mean, he's hardcore. I mean, I'm like, I don't want that gym. I'm too old for that. It's too much. Like, he's there from like 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. He's got a full staff. I mean, he runs freaking ship. And I'm like, man, I just want to chill and just, have a profitable gym and do jujitsu. Yeah. But it's possible. So I show people it's possible. And people are like, oh, you're lying, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm just going to keep lying every year for the next however long. So, I'll pull this off. And some people, then they start to believe it. And some people hate it. And they don't want to, they're like, oh no, I'm a traditionalist. I'll do this, I'll do that. And that's fine. But you missing out on so much with the business, because people are like, oh, it's not about the money. And it is about the money, because the better your gym is, the more successful your business is, the bigger impact you can have on your community. You can help more people. You can offer opportunities. Like, I'll sponsor kids that can't afford to go do tournaments, things like that. It's like, when we get caught up, especially, I don't know how it is over there, but in the US, like, money mindset's still horrible. To the people, unless you grew up in a wealthy family, it's like, oh, money's evil. Only rich people do that. Rich people suck. Money doesn't grow on trees. We can't afford that. I mean, our mindset is so bad. And you start getting around successful people, they don't talk like that.
Yeah. And that's the key thing. You say that again, you get around successful people. And that can be quite challenging, I guess, because depending on where you're from, you may not have anybody around you who's successful. So, how do you recommend people, where do they find that incentive, the innovation, the support mechanisms when they're in a difficult place, physically quite often?
Oh yeah. And that's the thing, that the world's changed so much. And nowadays you can find mentors and get help anywhere. It's like my situation. Like, I was getting help from a guy I live in Dallas, Texas. I was getting help from a guy in the UK and then a guy in Thailand. And it's like, I've never met either one in person, so it's like social media can be bad and it can be good. It can be bad, or it can be a complete total waste of time. But what I tell people is, like, if you don't have a lot of money and you can't afford to join a coaching program, just start looking for people that are doing what you want to do. Go on. Instagram's my favorite. Like, Facebook is kind of like, bleh, but Instagram's a positive place. People are happier. There's no political debates as much. What I love about Instagram is you see the person, but then also if they're doing their stories and things like that, you get to learn about behind the scenes and see what they're doing. And you start to pick up things like, oh, okay. And then a lot of them have a free Facebook group or a free email list. Get on that, start consuming information and using it. And you'll, like, literally, you can get around people, even though you might not physically be able to get around them. You can follow some of the most successful people in the world. I mean, like, obviously, like, the super high people, they don't do much. Like, Elon tweets, that's about it. But, mid-level super successful people, you can find them, and then you can, like, go back to the classics. Like, Jim Rohn's still one of my mentors. I mean, he's been dead for how long? But it's like, I listen to anything I can find on Jim Rohn. It's like, the guy was a legend. He's so helpful. So it's like doing things like that. So the things that are at our hands because of social media and the internet is you can find anything. And then eventually, you start growing your business and you're like, oh man, I want to, because nothing beats, that's what's been the hardest part for the last 2 years. Nothing beats like going to an event and being around people that understand what's going on in your head and the stresses you have and where you're trying to go. And they're like, oh yeah, I did that already. This is how I did it. And you're like, oh my God, that's what I needed. Thank you.
Yeah. I guess, you say go into events. They were a kind of a thing that disappeared for a couple of years. I think,
Yeah.
Tony Robbins turned things around quite a bit and having these online events enormous, didn't he? Enormous shows. Yeah. Is that the kind of events that you say is still worth attending, still worth getting into?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Like Tony Robbins stuff, that stuff's really good for like, getting started and stuff like that. For me, I try to find like events where people that I want to, they're a higher level than where I'm at and I want to get to. So I go there. And then I just hang out, and talk to people and network. And that's the biggest thing is don't be shy. Just go talk to people, network, don't go ask for things, but like, hey, can you go over my business plan and my P&L? They're going to roll their eyes and just walk away. It's like, just go there and just be a genuine good person, listen, ask, stuff about what they're doing, and then just build relationships and build a strong network.
Yeah. So when you're in your consulting role, what are the kind of things that people ask you? What are the golden nuggets that you help to steer people from, where they are now to where they want to become?
And that's a good question. The funniest thing is everybody, especially in my industry, a lot of it, they come in with a lead gen problem. Like, I just need more leads. I just got to get more people in the door. It's like, we just need more of this, more of that. And it's like, okay, what are your systems? And then we go through and look at they don't have any systems. They don't have a duplicable, not duplicable, but a system where it's like repeatable. They don't have a good, somebody fills out information on their website, they wait 2 days to contact them. They don't have automations. They don't have good appointment setting. They don't have good appointment confirmation. They don't have good customer service when the person comes in to do sales. They don't have all these little things. And when we tell them to look at it like, okay, so you want more leads into a broken system. It's like, well, they're like, well, no, I sign up, everybody comes into my gym. I sign up like 8 people a month. And I'm like, well, yeah, it's probably because those people actually Googled you, read your entire website. They know as much about you as you do. They're the hyper buyer. They found you and they're coming in to sign up. They're not coming in to like think about joining. So it's like those are the layups, the easy signups that every gym gets where somebody just walks in and wants to sign up. You're like, oh, okay, cool. What separates that business from the next level is having systems where it's like you're making sure you're following up with people right away when they opt in on the website. Then you're booking appointments. Then you're doing your confirmations and reschedulings. When they come in, you're having a really good sales presentation, where you're not just pitching them your product, you're finding what they want, what do they need, and make it all about the person, and then offer them what they want, and then it changes your life.
Yeah, so you've really got to take an active participation with people face to face. As you say, learn what they want, ask questions.
Yep.
As you say, that's it. Critical is to follow up, ask questions, show an active interest, actively participate, and that really pulls people closer into your community.
Oh yeah, it's and it works in any industry. I mean, it's the same thing anywhere.
Yeah. Your second book. Can you tell us a little bit about your second book and what was the inspiration behind that?
So it's funny. All my books and things get inspired by something else. So I was going to these internet marketing events and I was doing all these things and just talking to people and be a fly on the wall. I'm an active talker, but when I go to different events, I try to listen more than I talk because I just want to be, like that guy and not the guy that's just rambling off. And, so I tried to find these things. I hear the same people talking about the same things. They're like, oh, I got to do this launch, because I need to get this money in to pay all this stuff. And I'm like, you're like super successful. It's like, don't you do any investing or saving? They're like, no, I just dumped all my money back in the business and launched the launch. And I was like, literally, I almost had a panic attack. I'm like, how do you live like that? I don't understand. It's like, I've been investing in the markets since my first day as a broker and I never stopped. Even when I was running my business, still, it's like, I preach that every day. It's like money has to move, create velocity with your money. It has to go into something. If you just let it sit there and keep putting in your business, yeah, that's great. You're going to grow your business. But if something goes wrong or you need something, you're not going to have it. So people would ask me my advice on stuff and I tell them, and it's the same simple thing. I tell people that I talk to them a year later, they've done nothing. I'm like, oh, all right. So then I was like, man, I really want to position myself differently and help a lot of people. So when I wrote this book, it was just about giving people, an edge with their finances, learning the basic stuff of financial planning. And then of course, how to get started investing, why it's so important. And the easiest person to quote is Einstein. I mean, it's a compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. If you don't understand compound interest, you're setting yourself so far behind. You have to work so much harder. It's like, anybody's seen a financial graph when you put money in, it's like this and it goes, and then about year 20, it does this. Then and then you're 40, you're just like, oh my God, I just want to live 10 more years because I'll triple my money. It's like, but people wait too long to get started. It's like, so with my book, I wanted to really help people with that and have something where it gave them a good financial, stability base to work from.
Yeah, yeah. And then you were talking about passive income streams. Tell us a little bit more about that. What were the ones that you really advocate or you're strong into?
Okay. Yeah. And that's funny too. That's another literally happened because of 2020. I was like, I'm in the worst industry. Apparently I'm a non-essential person and my business doesn't matter. And they shut me down. And then cool, they shut down all my clients. I'm like, I'm really in a bad spot. So I started looking at like, okay, what's everybody else do? So I've done a little bit of commercial real estate. I had a rental house at one time. My wife made me sell. We had to sell it because we had a bad tenant. And she's like, well, if you ever have a rental house again, we're getting a divorce. So I'm like, okay, that's out the window. That sucked. Then I did a syndicate deal on a commercial property like 10 years ago, but I didn't really know what I was doing. I just followed a friend of mine who was super successful, and that was pretty cool. But then when all this stuff happened in 2020, I was like, man, I got to figure this out. So I started like, same thing I always do. I start looking for people. I'm like, what are these guys doing? And I'd seen this group. These guys were like, oh yeah, we just bought this, these restaurants in a syndicate deal, or we bought this Airbnb in a syndicate deal. I'm like, what's a syndicate deal? I'm like, I'm a smart guy. It's like, I was a stockbroker. I'm an investor. Well, I don't know what a syndicate deal is. And start looking at that. And then you start seeing like, we call it in the US, like accredited investor deals, where it's like, you have to be an accredited investor. And then once you are, you can get access to all kinds of crazy stuff. But until then, there's different syndicate deals. So I just started looking for these people it's like that old saying, bet on the jockey, not the horse. So I try to find people that were successful. I'm like, okay, I know this guy's successful. I've met him in person. I know he's not lying. It's like, this guy really lives this life, and they buy all this businesses, they do all this stuff. So then I started asking questions, and they started doing stuff. And I'm like, and then one day it just happened. They're like, hey, we're doing this deal. Anybody interested? Come to this, and this. So I went there, and I was laughing because you hear about different things about like a slide deck presentation, or, send the pitch deck. And you're like, what is that? And I got to see that. And I'm like, oh, this is really cool. It's like, they're breaking down their numbers. They're explaining everything. They're showing everything. I'm like, this is pretty cool. And then they're like, yeah, we're going to do this, this, and this. And what really sold me on it, I'll never forget, the CFO was talking, and he's like, oh, we know a lot of you people are new to syndications and doing this and this. So give you one thing though, one rule. They go, do not email us about how to run the business. Don't give us ideas. You have no say in anything. You are a passive investor. If you bother us, we will send your money back. And I was like, this is the greatest thing ever. It's like, I don't want to say anything, because I was thinking about it. If they have 150 investors and everybody sends 2 emails a day, they're getting 300 pointless emails a day that just ruin their lives. And I'm like, but they were so clear cut about it. They were like, this is what we do. We're doing this. We're going to open, 10 of these, then it's going to go to 100. Then we're going to open. And I'm like, this is amazing. So yeah, so we did at the end of last year, we ended up doing a syndicate deal for 10 coffee/donut shops, and then an Airbnb one. So my thing, I told my wife, I just want to be invested in so many unrelated things to my business that the world considers essential. Because I get a hard time. So like, people are like, oh, I can't believe, you're an MMA guy and you're going to open a donut shop. I'm like, no, it's coffee and donuts. And I'm like, hey, and you know what? It's essential. They didn't close those things down.
Yeah.
It's like, obviously working out's bad for you and donuts are good according to the government. So I was like, that's one thing you learn too from jiu-jitsu and MMA is find the rules and play within the rules and use them to your advantage. It's like, I didn't know that they could shut me down. So I was like, okay, next time I'm going to invest money, I'm investing something in totally different.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess this is the point about the benefits of diversification. Spread your bets. If one area goes down, quite often another area comes up. And, overall, you haven't got all your eggs in one basket, in the old cliche.
Yep. 100%. Because I come from the investing world of like, you put X amount of money away, then at 65, you set up an income plan, and then you take out 4 to 5. Everybody knows the numbers that's done finance stuff. I talked to a planner. It's like you take out 4 to 5% per year, then you won't outlive your money, yada, yada, yada. And I was like, that's cool and everything, but I don't want to wait till I'm 65, 70 years old to do a lot of stuff. So I was like, I'm still going to do this investing, but then also I'm going to take X amount of money. I'm going to put that into crypto because it's completely unrelated. Then I'm going to put X amount of money into real estate because that's completely unrelated. Then I'll put X amount of money into other business deals. And then every year now it's like, I can see that as this is the direction I want to go, because as I keep adding layers, it just changes everything. So then I'm not just going to rely on my investment income from the markets, because that's crazy. It's been a crazy quarter. This year's been tough. So, but then at the same time, you have other things that you're doing. So you try to diversify so you're not all in one basket. And then you still have your business.
Yeah, absolutely. So before I ask one more question, keeping an eye on the time, where's the best places for people to find out more about you, what you offer, learn about the ththings you're getting into?
Yeah, I go back to Instagram is my favorite right now. It's just so easy and it's such a happier place. But yeah, Instagram.com/PAUL_HALME, or you can go to paulhalme.com, which I'm getting that website redone right now. But Instagram's my favorite place to go and hang out because I just love following people, seeing what they're doing, posting stuff I'm doing. Pre-2020, I was a big travel bug. I wanted to travel everywhere when as much as I could. And, that's starting to pick back up again. So I'm having a lot of fun with that. And that's the best place.
Brilliant, brilliant. Okay, just to finalize now before I let you go, just thinking about any significant mistakes. You said you made some mistakes in your journey. What would you feel, what would you share with people right now to say, these are the things I'd recommend you try and avoid? Try not to do these things. Don't get sucked into these things.
Don't get sucked into getting rich quick. It just doesn't, I mean, everybody's heard of, oh, so-and-so made $2 million on, Dogecoin or Shiba, whatever. It's like, well, did they? And then you read the real story. It's like, well, the person went from whatever, and then it went to 2 million and then went down, and then they don't have anything. So people think everybody's trying to catch this home run. And every time I've tried to hit a home run, it's a strikeout. Like literally, I've done it. I've tried everything. I've tried day trading. I've tried, crap coins. I've done NFTs, things like that. And it's like, when I don't stick to the fundamentals and I try to hit home runs, things just fall apart. But if I just hit nice base hits, or I think about Michael Jordan. I love this one. Every time before a game practice, he did chest passes. I mean, the greatest basketball player of all time literally started with the fundamentals every day. It's because if you can hit those fundamentals, it goes back to habits, winning those daily habits, fundamentals. That's why I joke around people. Like, one of my key points to help people is move money every day. I move money every day. It's like, money's not designed to sit there. It's designed to go do things. And then you put to work for you, but stick to the fundamentals. Don't get crazy. Yeah, you can experiment, like, oh, I'm really, a huge person in crypto. That's cool if that's your thing and you really understand it and you really know what you're doing, but some of the volatile things, it's like, if you put all your eggs into one volatile basket, it'd be bad. My wife would murder me.
I think your wife's in charge there then. Fantastic. Oh, yeah. Fantastic. Well, I think there's been a tremendous amount of things that have come out of this conversation. I wouldn't know where to start to try and summarize. I'd have to do another 30 minutes here, Paul. So what I can say is people probably need to replay this, think carefully and take lots of notes. So I certainly want to say thank you very much for sharing so much of your journey and some beautiful nuggets of gold through that.
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, it's been fun. I had a good time.
Brilliant. Take care then, mate.
Thanks. You too.
Bye. So there's another Real Life Buyer podcast. I do hope you enjoyed it and it's given you some ideas and inspiration for greater action and achievement. If you are a purchasing or a supply chain professional, business owner or director, come and join my Facebook group, the Purchasing and Supply Chain Community Hub, a safe place to engage with like-minded, friendly people. See you soon. Bye.